GIC Radio presents The Truth Denied, Talk Radio, with your host, Roxy Lopez, where truth never lies. If you would like to speak with Roxy on the air, the call-in number is 347-327-9997. Here she is, your host, Roxy Lopez.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Truth Tonight Talk Radio, and I'll be your host today, Roxy Lopez. Today is the 16th of March. This year is flying by. Welcome. As usual, we have a spectacular guest today. I am very grateful to have Kathleen OKeefe Kanavos on the show today. In light of a lot of you know what happened in my world last year, my sister, dear sister, passed away of cancer. I spent her last days with her, I should say, and I was glad to have that opportunity to have those last conversations and very deep conversations. As you all know, my sister had an extreme will to live. She was diagnosed a decade ago, and she was an angel. She had so many friends, so much support, just a wonderful human being, and she used alternative healing along with Western medicine, and when she died, she had 52 lesions on her brain. Her specialist had never seen somebody live that long with that many lesions on the brain. And with that in mind, God bless, and her spirit lives on. And so I am so grateful. This is so dear to my heart, the subject matter, and I'm so grateful to be able to have Kathleen OKeefe on the show. Now, Kathleen is a two-time breast cancer survivor, and she has penned Surviving Cancerland, the psychic aspects of healing, and she is represented by Scoville, Gallen, and Gosh Literary Agency and Steve Allen Media. She's a phone counselor for the R.A. Block Cancer Foundation. We'll talk about that in the show. She is also a question and answer cancer columnist for Cape Women Online Magazine. And, of course, she's an inspirational speaker, mentor, cancer volunteer. And she's even in the Cambridge Who's Who Executive Professional of the Year 2009 through 2010. We're going to give you a lot of information today on cancer, Kathleen's story. I will mention something that Kathleen has said. She said there is almost always a point in the process of illness where logic, reason, and medical expertise fails. It's at this point a patient slips through the cracks, sometimes never to recover. I want to welcome to the show Kathleen OKeefe Kanavos. Welcome, Kathleen. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me, Roxy. It's wonderful to be here with you and your audience today.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time. You're a busy woman. My goodness.
I always have time for you.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Now, I'm going to just start out by asking something, and if you want to backtrack from here, that's fine. I want to know, first and foremost, why the word cancer scares us when we hear that word, and why so many of us still consider the diagnosis of cancer as a death sentence.
Well, I think cancer was always a death sentence up until just within the past, I'd say 10 years. But now we have more people than ever before, not only surviving cancer, but surviving recurrence. You know, it's sort of find it, fix it. I believe that we all have cancer cells in our body because it's a part of when the body breaks down, it begins to almost devour itself. And I think that with the stress levels that the populace has had lately, losing their homes, losing their cars, losing their jobs, there's a lot of cancer floating out there because we're vibrating at a lower frequency when we become extremely depressed. And that's what's happening. On the other hand, people come down with the flu all the time, and quite a few people die from the flu. The flu is nothing to take lightly. It's a very serious disease. It's a debilitating disease that allows other diseases like a pneumonia to move in and kill you. So, you find the flu, you fix the flu, you do what it is you need to do to get over the flu. And it's the same thing with cancer. We've been so frightened by so many horror stories and very few stories out there that give us light, that give us hope, that we have allowed ourselves to become paralyzed by the negative side of cancer. And that's why I think it's so important for me to get my story out there, because I survived recurrence, stage 4 recurrence. I survived it. And people say, well, why did you get it again if you were vibrating at such a high frequency? And that is something that we can get into later, and that is my divine game plan that I believe we all come down here with. And my divine game plan was to help doctors see the light, that science is not a religion. You don't worship science. You worship a higher power, because doctors and science are fallible. Your higher power is not. And the dreams that we have are doorways to the other side with our higher power. We need to listen to those dreams. Even infants begin to dream at 16 weeks. It can be picked up on ultrasound. They're conversing with their guardian angels on the other side. They've come down here with their game plan. And the guardian angels say to those precious little babies, we're going to be with you every step of the way. It's a dangerous place down there on earth, but you're never alone. And that's something that we need to focus on, because although we're not infants anymore, we still have the same guardian angels, spiritual guides, and they're still right by our side. All we have to do is listen.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, and thank you for that validation and reminder. I completely agree with you. I have another question for you. And this is a tough one, because I think some people might think, what a stupid question that is.
Well,
but I've asked, there are no stupid questions, and so I want the audience to hang in there with this question. I want to know personally, how did you feel when you were first diagnosed with cancer?
Well, when I was diagnosed with it, it was a validation. Okay. Because I had already been having the dreams, and I had already gone to my doctor like 4 times, 4 different mammograms, 4 different blood tests. And the dreams told me to go back to my doctor. And I think it's important to point out here, Roxy, my guide did not say go to a holistic doctor named Ramalama Ding Dong. They said go back to your doctor, which tells me my guides had faith in those doctors, even though the doctors didn't really have faith in them. And so I think that we were connected through the dream. And when my cancer was actually validated through the biopsy, through the pathology report, I already knew what that pathology report was going to say, but it didn't make it any less devastating. It really didn't. You never want to hear the words you have cancer. You just don't, because you very seldom hear wonderful stories with happy endings like mine. That's just the it's the news media, the newspapers, the radio stations. They are going for the sad story because it gets the most listeners. People need to stop listening to that. There are so many survivors out there. There are so many of us that have defied the odds, because the odds and the statistics for those odds have been made by people who don't even know about how many survivors there really are.
Isn't that amazing? I love that you said stop listening to that. because you're absolutely right. We do hear the horror stories, and we hear them over and over again. We watch them happen in our own lives. I mean, in my lifetime, I've been by the bedside of people who died of cancer a number of times. So, and young people. I had a very good friend that died of cancer. She didn't even know she had cancer. And by the way, she was a person who meditated on a daily basis. She thought something was wrong because she was feeling tired. But when she went in to be diagnosed, to finally get her diagnosis, she had cancer all over her entire body. And then it took some months from there for her to pass away. Many of us friends of Rosemary would go to the house for months and around the clock and just be there with her, and she wanted to just have a good time. She didn't want, and that's how my sister was as well. She just wanted to have a good time. She wanted to live every last breath. And I've learned a lot from being in friends and families' lives that had cancer. I like what you're saying about
Roxy,
why.
In Palm Desert?
Pardon me?
Was Rosemary in Palm Desert?
Rosemary was in California.
Yeah, in Palm Desert, California?
No, she wasn't in Palm Desert, and she passed away in 97.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right, because I had a friend out here named Rosemary that just passed away. The same story. I was like, oh, my gosh, could we possibly have that connection?
Oh, right. Well, we found quite a few that we've had. So I guess where I was going with that is for yourself, okay, so for you, it wasn't the death sentence. It was a validation of dreams that you were having, et cetera, and repeat visits to your doctor. Finally, the validation came through after the pathology, the test came through, your biopsy, if you will. And then from that moment, and like you said, and I like that you answered the question, how did that feel? Because it does feel devastating. It would have to feel devastating. That now, in that moment, or in that few moments of feeling, even though you already really knew the answer, how did you move from devastation? How long did that take? What was the process to jump into, I'm going to beat this? What was that transition? What was that process for you? I think a lot of people need to hear, because I think people get stuck in the fear, stuck in the death sentence, if you will, and really sort of begin to give up right then and there in the doctor's office.
Right.
Okay.
I think the most important thing was once you realize that yes, you do have breast cancer or any cancer, you go home thinking, well, I want to beat this, but am I going to be able to beat this? I mean, let's be honest. Yeah, I'm not going to say, oh, I went home going, yes, absolutely, I'm going to beat this. I know I am. I'm not even worried about it. Nah, it doesn't quite work like that. You're devastated. You're frightened. You can't even breathe. You're so frightened you can't breathe. And I remember one of the turning points was I had just taken care of my mother, who died of colon cancer about 8 months before I was diagnosed. So I knew what an ugly death cancer was. I'd been there, seen that, I'd already been there. So I was scared out of my mind. And I had a dream, and in the dream, my mother popped into my dream, grabbed both of my hands and said, you are going to be just fine, and disappeared. And I thought, well, that was really weird. I don't know what that was all about, but okay, I'm going to take it at face value and believe that I'm going to do everything that I can do, including connect with my guides, to beat this. And I remember in a dream, my inner selves, I met quite a few of my inner selves, because in order to beat something, you have to be connected with your inner selves. You're all in this fight together. And when you are divided by self, you are beating yourself. You are at war with yourself. You need to be united. This is the one time where you need to put everything else aside. Your Debbie Downer needs to be on your side. All of those people need to pull together and that is your army. That is who is going to be behind you every step of the way. And I remember in one of my dreams, one of my inner selves said to me, if we were meant to die, our guides would never have gone to the trouble of giving us prophetic dreams over and over and over again and sending us back to our doctors. There's something bigger going on here. So I believed between my mother and that I was supposed to survive. Now, when I came down with the cancer the second time, I was really devastated. I was out of my mind the second time because, again, the doctors missed it. They were trying to get me to only take mammograms, and I told them, I said, mammograms didn't work the first time. I need an MRI. And it took me 4.5 months to get that MRI. And at that point, I was in stage 4, which was terminal. And I remember I was angry. So I had to let go of that anger, because anger will eat you up just like a cancer. You've got to let go of it. And one of the things I did to let go of it was I would take the anger, put it in a pink balloon, and send it to God. And I'd say, you deal with it. You know, this is way too heavy for me to deal with right now. You deal with the anger, because I can't go there. And that really did help. But in a dream I had, my guides showed up right after I was diagnosed the second time. And I said to them, why? Why me and why twice? And they looked at me and they said, Kathy, you said you wanted to do this. You decided to do this before you ever came down here. You were going to go through cancer twice, because finding cancer in your dreams, that state-of-the-art test at a major cancer institute missed once, would be like winning the lottery, which is very difficult. But to have it done again and survive stage 4 is like winning the lottery 2 times in a row. It just doesn't happen. That's divine intervention. And if you were meant to die, you would already be dead. We told you before you were born into the earth plane that we would be with you every step of the way. And we're here. You're not meant to die if you stay connected with us and allow us to help you choose the right path at this fork in the road. And they said, just because you have intuitive gifts does not save you from the perils of the earth. You're still going to get sick. You're still going to fall down and break your leg. The difference is we're going to guide you to complete your destiny. And until you complete that destiny, we don't want you to die. And so, you know, that was very reassuring. If I was meant to die, it would have meant that I already fulfilled my destiny. And some people fulfill that destiny very early. If you think of life as a baseball game, some of us hit the ball shorter than others, and we have to run to each base and wait for the next ball to be hit and get to the next base. And it can be a very long game. There are others that come out and hit a home run. They run the bases and they get to go home. And so, you know, parents who are grieving the loss of a child, I understand it's normal to lose our parents. You know, when we lose our parents, we come into our own. That's a normal part of life. When you lose a child, it's a whole different ball game. But those parents need to understand that that child fulfilled their destiny. Whatever that destiny was, it was to come down here for a very short period of time, interact with those parents, possibly put them on the right path, and then that child got to leave. That child didn't lose out. The parents did, yes, because they don't have them on the earth plane. But our time on the earth plane is so short, and we have so much to do. And the parents need to understand that that child is now on the other side, guiding them through dreams and meditation. They're not gone. They're just gone from the earth plane. But they did what they needed to do, and they got to go home early.
That's a neat way of looking at it. That's a really neat way of looking at it. And thank you for that. Now, to be clear, now you talk about your guides and the dreams and the path that you chose. Now, I'd like to know something. Prior to being diagnosed with cancer, did you already have a connection with your guides and dreams?
I'd always been a pretty good dreamer, but I never really had them come through like this. There were other times where guides would come into my dreams, and when they do, I would be dreaming a dream, and suddenly the dream would freeze, much like your computer freezes, and I'd get a pop-up window. And my guides are always dressed in hooded robes, brown hooded robes, like a monk, with a rope belt and leather sandals. And they would step through these windows, and they would give me information, or I'd be walking with one of my guides in a dream, and they would be pointing things out. Like one dream that I had, I was walking through a botanical garden, and I was walking with my guide, and I said, I think that I'm very lucky because I've had such a wonderful life. Really, I've had a very good life. And he stopped and he looked at me and he said, that's really just a matter of perception. And that was the end of the dream. And then when I started comparing my life to other people's, I lived a very dangerous life. I was a military brat, raised in Europe. I lived in Berlin. My dad was a Green Beret. I was there when the wall went up. We were always on the edge of war. It was a dangerous life. It was a lonely life to a degree because I was an only child and we moved all the time. I was in 4 or 5 different first grades. So, but my perception was that I was having a great time. Other people would have been miserable, and many of my friends didn't make it through high school. They committed suicide or they overdosed on drugs because they perceived that life as being very difficult. I perceived it as being wonderful. So a lot of times what we feel about our life is indeed a matter of perception. I could have become very distraught over the fact that I got cancer twice. I could have become very angry at my guides for not having warned me sooner. I could have been outraged with the medical society for not listening to me. But instead, I choose to perceive this as a message from the other side that's proclaiming, we're here. There is life after death. Life on the earth plane is very short. This is so much longer, so much more powerful, and we are connected through the greatness of oneness and our higher power. And so I choose to perceive this as a wonderful message, and that's why I'm sharing it.
Right. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. All right. So with that in mind, and I love that you describe your experience when you were growing up, because you're absolutely right. It's the attitude in which you decided to take, because we can all look at our life from a victim standpoint, or we can look at our life from an opportunity. Crisis is opportunity, or crisis is crisis, whichever way you want to look at it. And I can really relate to what you're saying. You decided when you were growing up, when you were young and moving all over the place and a military brat and living in a very dangerous world, as you say, you had fun with it. You made an adventure out of it. And that is an attitude that separates a lot of people, for sure. I think anyone could admit that. I think that even some of us are very attracted to people who think like you do, because there is something about it. You know, they say we have choices. How do we want to look at the world? How do we want to operate in the world? We have choices. Choices being, how do I want to experience today? Do I want to experience it laughing, having a good time, and looking at all the little mistakes in the day as just an adventure of today? Or do I want to look at it like woe is me? I can't believe this happened again to me. It's happened to me 5 times today. We become a magnet, I think, to either one, and I think that we're all looking for that balance. And I do want to mention something right here, which you'll appreciate. I was watching an interview with Jane Fonda, and Jane Fonda, one of the most profound things that she said in the 2-hour mini documentary was, she said that at the age of 62, she began to look back at her life, and she decided to write a book. She'd already written books, but this time this was going to be different. She wanted to look back at her life, and she asked herself the question, who were my parents? Who was I when I was growing up? She wanted to see her life from a different perspective. And anyway, endeavoring in this book, she came up with something very profound, very profound to me. It made me cry. She said, I realized at one point when I was writing my book that I had lived my life striving to be perfect. And she said, when really all I was looking for was to be whole.
Mm-hmm.
Huge difference.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so in this adventure, this experience that you have had with cancer, would you say that something like that had crossed your mind as well, that you were seeking to be whole, that there, in other words, there was no perfect way to get through what you were going to get through, that you were more or less seeking some much deeper answers about yourself?
Yes, and I think it brings you down to your lowest possible level, is so that you know what you find your boundaries, and then you surpass them. You realize where they are, where your comfort zone was, and you step out of it. Like one radio host said, well, you know, when you say that people need to self-advocate for themselves, because if you don't, you are responsible for yourself, Roxy. Nobody else is really responsible for you. You are responsible for yourself, just like I am responsible for myself. And if I go to a doctor or anybody of authority and they refuse to listen to me, it's up to me to do whatever it is I need to do to get their attention. You can either be the windshield or you can be the fly. I chose not to be the fly. I became the windshield. And I did not take no for an answer, and I would not be dismissed. I didn't care who they were. They're doctors. They put their shoes on the same way I do. And so it's up to me to be able to take a step back and say, okay, they're not seeing me for who I really am, because they're seeing me for what they want to see me as. How can I step out of this role and become what I wish I were already in order to get their attention and their respect? And sometimes you have to take on a different role. I took on the role of like warrior princess. And I said, you know what? I'm not leaving your office till I get that MRI. I'm going to lie down here on your rug in front of all these people, and I'm going to kick my feet and scream like a 2-year-old, and you're going to have to call security to come and drag me out. Now, that's not me, but it is an aspect of myself. And that's
it sounds like that is you now.
Well, you know, I kind of, that person was inside me. And when that was against the rock and the hard spot, that person came out to save me. And we all have those people in us. And if you find that you are feeling like you're victimized by others, I think it's time to step back and have a nice long talk with yourself and say, okay, I know warrior princess is in there. If I were that warrior princess, who would I be and what would I do and how could I do it and still gain respect? How can I say things forcefully and yet still be respectful and polite, but say it in a way that people will now pause and take a look at me? And we need to embrace that person, because that person is within us and that person can save us. I mean, I'm the type of person who will open up a window in the house and invite the flies out. I just don't believe in killing anything just because it's bothering me. I didn't create that fly. I can't create another fly. It was a creation by a higher power. And believe me, that fly is on the glass of that kitchen window because it wants to get out. I'll catch it in my hand and throw it outside. So going up against medical authorities was not in my natural nature, but there was a warrior princess in there who pulled out a sword and said, bonked him on the head and said, you are going to listen to us. And I think we all need to find that person. I mean, my husband was shocked when he saw that person because he's never seen that either. And but we all have those in us, and we need to connect with them, especially when we're in crisis, any crisis, divorce, financial, health, you name it, it's there. Find it.
I think that's excellent, absolutely excellent. I mean, what you're describing is, you know, through the work that I do, I do come across more people that don't have a voice than do have a voice. And as yourself, I encourage people to find their own unique voice, and start using it, because I think that the world, humanity, on a general level, we won't go there right now, but in general, have been so suppressed and so told the lies about anything these days that humanity has lost their voice. They just decided to shut up one day and just take it. And these are opportunities for everyone to get their voice back. And you said it so eloquently. For those who are joining, we're at the bottom of the hour, joining the show right now. We're with Kathleen OKeefe Kanavos, two-time survivor of cancer. And the number is, if you want to call in and ask Kathleen a question, the number for the show is 347-327-9997. And feel free to call in. Kathleen is totally open to any kind of questions. But back to what you were just saying, you said something quite big and meaningful as far as the medical field a little bit earlier. How did the medical field, the doctors, the specialists that you were working with, how did they treat you once you opened up to them and told them what was guiding you? How open or closed-minded did you get anyone to play ball with you on that one?
Well, I didn't get any of the Boston doctors, too, and I knew better than to try. I figure when my book is published, I'll give them a signed copy of my book, and they can read about themselves in it and my guides and my dreams. And because even the second time, one of my doctors said was, well, I guess mammograms aren't your friend. And I was thinking, well, yeah, you think? It worked the first time. Why are you using them the second time? But, I needed them. I knew I needed them. And for whatever reason, that's where my guides were guiding me. And if my guides had wanted them to know, they would have said, tell your doctor. But it probably would have just gotten me a padded cell and not the treatment that I needed. So when I did go to New York the second time because I wanted a double mastectomy and the Boston doctors would not do it, when I went to New York, the New York doctors figured it out. And they confronted me. They said, are you psychic? I said, and I remember I was sitting on the table and I looked at them and I said, well, why? And they said, because everything you've been telling us has been right. And everything that we wanted to do, and we were thinking, do we really want to listen to what she's saying, or do we want to go ahead and do what we want to do? And we did what you said you wanted to do, and you were right. And I said, yeah, I am. And so then they were very interested, and they wanted to know about the dreams, and they wanted to know about the guides. And it was very easy to work with them after that. And they told me, they said, you are the talk of the cocktail parties in New York. I said, oh, really? And they said, yes, you are. And I said, well, good. Because if it's coming from the mouths of the doctors to other doctors, they may respect it more than if it just comes from the mouth of the patient. But when my book does come out, there are going to be a lot of people scratching their heads because, you see, the dreams were validated with medical tests that the doctors performed. The second set of medical tests, and they can't poo-poo that. There was a double-blind study. Right.
Can you share with the audience the white feather dream?
Sure. It was during my first cancer, and I had been having nightmares. I had gone to my doctor and had my physical exam, my mammography, blood test, all that stuff, and everything came back as being healthy. And then I started having these nightmares. And in the nightmares, my guide stepped through the doorway into my dream and said, we have something to tell you. And they took my hand and they put it on my breast, and they said, you have breast cancer, and it's right here. And so I went back to my doctor 4 different times, and I said, look, it's right here. I have breast cancer. It's right here. My doctor kept saying, well, let's do another mammogram. I can't feel anything, and there's nothing in your blood test. And so the 4th time when my guide stepped through the pop-up door, the pop-up window, when I saw him, I started crying in my dream. And I said, look, I know why you're back, but I don't know what to do. Well, I'm up against a rock and hard spot here. What do you want me to do? I can't prescribe my own test. And he said, you need a exploratory surgery. He said, and here is a feather. He reached into his pocket and he pulled out this little ratty white feather. It wasn't any bigger than a white feather that you would find lying on the floor, your bedroom floor, that came out of a pillow. And he said, if you go back to your doctor tomorrow and you imagine this feather is a sword, and you verbally fence with him, and you tell him as though he were a judge and you were an attorney that he didn't even like, you set out your case. You say, you know, I'm not the type of person to show up and just be a pain unless I know that there is something wrong and I need for you to listen to me. You'll win, and you'll get the test that you need, which is the exploratory surgery. He said, go back without an appointment. Show up on the doorstep. So that's what I did, and it's like an hour-and-a-half drive each time I did this from Cape Cod into Boston. And, you know, my poor husband's going with me, and he's just going on the fact that I'm having these dreams. And he's, you know, behind me all the way. And I faced my doctor, and I said, I need exploratory surgery. Because he said to me, why are you back? And I said, I need exploratory surgery. I know something's there. And he said, Kathy, that's against hospital policy, and it's against my policy. You know, you're talking surgery, possible complications like infection or anesthesia. They can't just cut you open and search around in your breast. When we have nothing to go on, you're healthy. You are the picture of health. And I imagined that feather. I took it out of my pocket in my mind, and I pointed that feather at him in my mind, and I said, I need for you to listen to me. You know me better than to know that I would just show up here for no good reason and beg you to cut me open. And he looked at me for a second, and it was, Roxy, was almost like a vampire had stepped into the room and glimmered him. And he looked at me and he said, okay. And I'll go out and check my calendar and see what's available. And so I had surgery within the week. I had surgery, and I woke myself up out of anesthesia when I heard him say, we got it, let's close her up. And I turned to him, and trying to wake yourself up out of anesthesia is like trying to climb up the slippery slope that writers always write about. And you're going, slippery slope, what are they talking about? Well, it's like trying to crawl up the side of a dark, slimy, cold, wet well full of moss and water. And I finally poked my head up over the top of this dark well, and I turned to him and I said, what was it? Because that's how anxious I was. I was so anxious. You know, we were talking about the fear. It was so strong that it could literally wake me up out of anesthesia. And I heard my doctor go, well, I didn't hear anything because nobody was even breathing. The place became deadly silent. And my anesthesiologist said, who was sitting behind my head, did she just speak? And my doctor said, Kathy, it's what we thought it was. If it was anything, it's just a fibrous tumor, tiny thing. We took it out. It's nothing. Go back to sleep. And he said to the anesthesiologist, give her more. Well, he did. And it took me hours to come out. And when I did, I was so nauseous. But when I woke up in the recovery room, my doctor walked in and he pulled the security or the privacy curtain around behind him, and that was the first red flag that went up. And then he came over and he took my hands, and I was like, oh, that's it. This is not good. And that scared me so badly that it literally scared me out of my nausea. I was no longer nauseous. I was just scared out of my mind. And he said pathology didn't like what they saw when they cut open the tumor. And I said, well, is it breast cancer? And he said, yes. And now I have to refer you to a specialist. And those words just like punched me in the chest, because when he said, okay, I'll do the surgery, I said, well, shouldn't we have an oncologist present? And he said, Kathy, you are too young for cancer. I know what cancer feels like, and I'm not even feeling anything. I know you don't have cancer. And I said, well, then who's going to do the surgery? And he said, I am. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to argue with him because I don't want him to change his mind and drop me. I'll deal with it as I need for it to be dealt with. So here I am talking to him, and he's going, now you need a second surgery as quickly as possible, because basically what he's saying is I'm just a gynecologist who cut into a cancerous area, and now you have cancerous cells and going through your whole system. Because I shouldn't not really have been in there. So now I had to have a second surgery done with an oncologist, an oncological surgeon, who had to make sure that we had clear margins, that there was no cancer left behind, and to check my lymph nodes. And it turned out there was cancer in the lymph nodes, and I was already in stage 2.
Mm.
So that was my white feather. We have, as individuals, Roxy, we have like our own little bag of tricks. When we reach into our little bag of tricks and we pull a trick out. Well, we also have a bag of people. And each of those people within us in that bag has their own bag of tricks. So when we're not utilizing all those people, when we're not reaching down into our bag of people and yanking out our Einstein or yanking out our Xena warrior princess, we're not using everything that we've got within ourselves to keep ourselves alive, to fulfill our destiny here on the earth plane. And we all have a destiny or we wouldn't be here. And, our Einstein has an incredible bag of tricks, things that we couldn't even think of without them. So it's important that we use all of those people within ourselves, those people that are going to hand us feathers, those people who are going to speak the language of the doctors. It's almost like somebody else is talking for you, and the doctors can understand what they're saying. And we need to use all those tricks and all those people with their bags of tricks.
And would you say that it's probably pretty important to get doctors or surgeons or specialists on board that are like-minded, or is it up to us to train the doctors? I mean, which way does that go?
I think it goes both ways, Roxy.
Okay.
I think that there are a lot of doctors out there who are like-minded like us and that I could have spoken to, but that would be preaching to the choir. My destiny, I believe, is to teach doctors who are worshiping science that there is still a higher power and that their test just proved it. It would be easy to preach to the choir, but I'm going into the lion's den. And I'm okay because I know I'm not alone. I have my guides right beside me. And believe me, those doctors are no match for my guides. And so my destiny is to go in and heal my doctors of unsound medical practices that are in favor of the hospitals and not the patients. These hospital policies that tell a doctor, you have 4 minutes with a patient and that's it. You don't listen to them. You walk in and you tell them what you're going to do when you leave. That must stop. Patients are paying their insurance companies incredible sums of money. You are paying that doctor. That doctor works for you. If you need to bring a jump rope with you and tie him in the chair, do it. Reach into that bag of tricks. Find something to get him to stay, a mental jump rope, to stay in that seat and listen to you. That's your job. And then to work with him, because you see, my guides didn't tell me to go somewhere else. They told me to go back to these doctors who were not listening to me and get them to listen to me, because my guides had faith in those doctors. There was something in those doctors that needed a little bit of sunlight and a little bit of water, and it would begin to grow for the benefit of mankind, for the benefit of humanity. And that's why I went there.
And that's pretty amazing, because what I'm hearing you say is that this was life or death for you, and yet you returned to these doctors because that is what your guides had instructed you to do, and this was life or death. This wasn't like you were going to a bankruptcy attorney, the same one that wasn't going to process the bankruptcy correct. This was about life or death. So this is absolutely profound. Your voice is so full of life, and you're so full of passion for life. I commend your bravery, your courage. Where are we today with all of this? Where's your life going? I know that you mentioned in the past 5 months you've done umpteen radio shows. I mean, you truly are the talk of the town, and you should be. Where are you going? You've got a book coming out. I see a movie because I'm sitting here listening to you, and I can just picture all of these places and doctors and the guides and the feathers and all this stuff. I mean, it's just so absolutely profound and prolific. You are, anyway. Where are you going from here? What's next?
Well, what's next is to get my first book published, which is Surviving Cancerland, the psychic aspects of healing. I may change the title to the intuitive aspects because I'm afraid that too many people think of psychic as looking into a crystal ball and that's not what I ever meant. By psychic, I meant your mind. more like the Freud psychic, where you're using your inner intelligence, your inner mind, that part of your brain that you don't normally use but is still there, using that to stay alive when you're faced with life-threatening crisis, whatever that happens to be. So by using intuitive, I think women are more comfortable with that because we have an innate female intuition. You know, our body speaks to us with signs and symbols every single day, whether, you know, we're getting ready to menstruate, whether we're getting ready for PMS, whether we're getting ready to give birth and start nesting. And so, yes, I'm getting my books out, and I'm continuing to talk on talk shows to spread the word and help people learn to trust in themselves again, to reach into that bag of people and meet their inner selves and pull those people out to help them survive crisis, because our world right now is in a pretty strong state of crisis. But without crisis, you don't have change. And so there is prolific change going on. And you can either see it as being good change or bad change. And again, that is a matter of perception. I choose to see it as good, and therefore it is.
Absolutely. Well, and like you say, you know, and have said so many times, you know, the experience is unique for each one of us. And so therefore we have the free will and the free choice. I think it's very, very difficult. You know, there are people who are terrified of going to a dentist. And so they rather have every tooth in their mouth fall out before they go to a dentist again because they had such a bad experience. I could say that about a lot of the medical field. And believe me, I am not trying to, I just want to be clear here, and I don't think you're trying to say this either. I'm not trying to diss on the medical field whatsoever. There are many, many people in the medical field who have, who I respect, who have been a part of my own personal life and healing. So we're not trying to diss it. I think what is best that's coming out of what your message is that you're saying, look, we have an intuition. We can survive anything, whether it be cancer, whether it be bankruptcy, losing our homes, losing our cars, we can survive. We can walk through it. And that's number one. And what you are bringing to the world is what the world needs, absolutely, which is hope. That is what this planet needs right now, hope. We don't seem to have a whole lot of hope going on right now. So I really appreciate that you bring that to the experience here, that hope is pretty much on the top of your list. That's what, and as well, to engage with doctors and increase the understanding and awareness that doctors have that the mind does play a huge role in healing.
Yes. I believe that patients have all the questions and they also have all the answers, and we need to retrain doctors to listen to their patients. You know, the old back country doctor who would sit and listen and then come up with profound treatments. We're kind of missing that. We've gone beyond it almost with science. And even though science is helping people to live longer than they ever were able to live before, I think we need to mix the two together. And there's a wonderful saying by a French dramatist named Eugene Lonsko, and he is quoted as saying, ideology separates us, and dreams and anguish bring us together.
That's beautiful. And it truly is a reality. The message that you have is just absolutely profound. I want to learn even more about what you're doing. We're going to continue my organization, and you and I have already talked about this, so I'm really excited about. We're going to continue to work with you. And just for the listening audience's sake as well, we're going to give a lot of information about Kathleen for you today because she's just involved with so many. She has statistics, American Cancer Society statistics, projects, her book. a lot of information on this that you can pass on, information about mammograms. This can be passed on to our friends, our families, people who might be already diagnosed with cancer, people who never had cancer but can pass it on to a friend of theirs who has been diagnosed with cancer or thinks they have cancer. This is really amazing and informative information. And Kathleen, how many years has it been since this first took place in your life? In other words, the dreams of having cancer, then going through all of these 2 different cancer bouts until today. How many years took place from beginning to today?
Well, the first cancer that I had was almost 14 years ago, and the second one was 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this has been some time that you have been researching and becoming a part of a real solution. Maybe we mentioned it at the very front of the show. Maybe we can talk a little bit about what's the Cancer Foundation, the RA Block Cancer Foundation. You're a phone counselor. What does that entail?
Well, I'm a hotline phone counselor, and what that entails is people who are newly diagnosed with cancer can call the RA Block Hotline Cancer phone line.
Do you have that number?
It's on my website. I don't have it in front of me, but it is on my website, which is www.survivingcancerland.com. Surviving is one word. Cancerland is all one word. And what they do is they will find you a mentor. Like, for instance, I would mentor a woman who is my age that had my type of cancer and was going to go through my cancer treatment. And I would talk to her about, about surviving this and give her some peace of mind, because when you're first diagnosed, you're very, very frightened. I'm also on Cancer Connect on the internet. It's a cancer, a place where you can go, and there are rooms where you can type in your questions and answers, and people who have survived cancer will go in there and answer your questions. Like one girl just typed in there, my mother has been diagnosed with cancer, and she's going to take a certain treatment. Did anybody in here have that type of cancer and take that treatment? And I did. So I answered her and said, yes, I did. And this is what I did. And this is what I went through. And so now we're in dialogue.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And so this has become, it sounds like, looks like, this has become your life now. This is your life. This is what you do.
This is an aspect of my life. And because I was an instructor for the University of South Florida in Fort Myers, I'm used to dealing as an instructor, and so I can keep a professional distance so that I don't feel their pain and I don't feel their fear, but I can sympathize with them, but I don't empathize, and that's a really big thing, because otherwise I would burn out. But I do still have my regular life. I play tennis, I horseback ride, I have my friendship groups. We go out to lunch. So this is an aspect of my life, and it's an important aspect of my life. But I do have balance within my life, and that's very important.
That is very key, and I needed to hear that today. I'll tell you that much. Real briefly, how do people connect with you? Who do they just go to your website, Surviving Cancerland, and is there a contact email for you if people want to actually email you or write to you, or do you prefer them going through the RA Block Cancer Foundation for question and answer counseling? How do people connect with you? Just the general public.
Well, you can email me. I email anybody back who emails me, and my email is Kat, K-A-T-K-A-N, Katcan at Comcast.net. So it's the first 3 letters of my first and last name, Katcan at Comcast.net. You can go to my website and down www.survivingcancerland.com, and in the lower left-hand corner are my Facebook pages. My profile page is completely maxed out. That maxed out within a few months. but I think they call it a fan page, which has no limit to the amount of friends I can have, which is wonderful, is called Surviving Cancerland, all in capital letters. Just click on that and it'll take you right to my page, and we can chat there. Also, my Twitter pages are there, and my blog site is at the very top. It says Kathy's blog, and if you go onto my blog site and click joining it, your picture will show up there, and I can follow you back to your blog. And I have a lot of blogs in there about surviving cancer, surviving depression, that can go with any type of crisis. A lot of really great articles that I've put in magazines, and some that I just keep for my blog. And some of them are parts of my book.
Excellent, excellent. And we will definitely get all of this information out to the public. Of course, everyone that just heard it and wanted to take notes. And we also will do the video and the download of the show today. So this information will stay out there indefinitely, so that we can put people in touch with you indefinitely, and we will continue to do that. And I think that I just want to thank you so much. It's so good to meet you yesterday. Well, we've been talking for quite a while, but it's been good to actually talk with you yesterday and then speak with you again today on the show. Thank you for coming into my home and having a cup of tea and sharing with the world your experience. And there's so much more to you than any of us know at this point. And I'm sure that we'll get to know you better and better as time goes on. I applaud your efforts, your courage, and wish you much success with your book. Let us know when it comes out. We'll have you back on the show, and I'm sure that we will be speaking to each other via emails. Thank you so much for joining our show today. I'm sure that you've touched a lot of people, and you're just an information queen. Thank you, Kathleen.
Well, thank you, Roxy, for having me. I really enjoyed myself.
Awesome. And that was Kathleen OKeefe Kanavos, and what a plethora of information. And we, like I said, we will have more of Kathleen on our website. I'm just blown away. I'm sitting here listening to Kathleen today and thinking, this is a movie. I want to see the movie. So that was Kathleen. Again, quite a few people have been writing in about are we going to be doing more shows? At this point, we're going to stay on Fridays. We were going to switch the days, but we're going to stay on Fridays. Also, I want to remind everybody, I'm also being interviewed quite a bit on other shows now. So we have on Monday, I'm going to be a guest on Dr. Bernard's show, Just Bernard, I should say, and that's at 11 o'clock Eastern time. So join us on Monday. Dr. Bernard Alvarez will be interviewing me. Next Friday, we have Exopolitics Alfred Weber on our show, the 23rd at 12 Pacific Coast time. The 24th, I will be interviewed on Hans Ohler's show at 7 p.m. We'll have some advertisement for that. On the 26th, I'm going to be interviewed by Rebecca on the Journey show. We'll put out an advertisement for that. And then, of course, the following Friday, we're going to have John Fitzgerald, who's running for the 11th District in California for Congress. He has a lot to say. You really need to tune in for that one. And then on the 31st, I'll be interviewed on the Howard Extell show, AM radio, on geoengineering and GMOs. And the list goes on and on. I'm so grateful to be part of the GIC family, and I just have nothing but good things to say. It just keeps on rolling. Oh, sorry, the show on Monday is 1 o'clock. I'm so sorry, 1 o'clock Eastern time. So I'm looking at a big schedule here. And by the way, on the 20th, I'll be interviewed on the Sean David Morton show. For an hour or so regarding geoengineering and chemtrails. So anyway, you've been listening to the Truth Denied Talk Radio, and I want to thank you for joining us every Friday at noon Pacific time. I'm your host, Roxy Lopez. Mahalo nui loa for joining us. To all my wonderful friends and family in Hawaii. God bless. We'll talk to you soon. To live, she was diagnosed a decade ago, and she was an angel. she had so many friends, so much support, just a wonderful human being, and she used alternative healing along with Western medicine. And when she died, she had 52 lesions on her brain. Her specialist had never seen somebody live that long with that many lesions on the brain. And with that in mind, God bless, and her spirit lives on. And so I am so grateful. This is so dear to my heart, the subject matter, and I'm so grateful to be able to have Kathleen OKeefe on the show. Now, Kathleen is a 2-time breast cancer survivor, and she has penned Surviving Cancerland, the psychic aspects of healing, and she is represented by Scoville, Gallen, and Gosh Literary Agency and Steve Allen Media. She's a phone counselor for the R.A. Block Cancer Foundation. We'll talk about that in the show. She is also a question and answer cancer columnist for Cape Women Online Magazine. And, of course, she's an inspirational speaker, mentor, cancer volunteer. And she's even in the Cambridge Who's Who Executive Professional of the Year 2009 through 2010. We're going to give you a lot of information today on cancer.
The light that science is not a religion. You don't worship science. You worship a higher power, because doctors and science are fallible. Your higher power is not. And the dreams that we have are doorways to the other side with our higher power. We need to listen to those dreams. Even infants begin to dream at 16 weeks. It can be picked up on ultrasound. They're conversing with their guardian angels on the other side. They've come down here with their game plan. And the guardian angels say to those precious little babies, we're going to be with you every step of the way. It's a dangerous place down there on earth, but you're never alone. And that's something that we need to focus on, because although we're not infants anymore, we still have the same guardian angels, spiritual guides, and they're still right by our side. All we have to do is listen.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, and thank you for that validation and reminder. I completely agree with you. I have another question for you. And this is a tough one, because I think some people might think, what a stupid question that is. But I've asked, there are no stupid questions, and so I want the audience to hang in there with this question. I want to know personally, how did you feel when you were first diagnosed with cancer?
Well, when I was diagnosed with it, because it's a part of when the body breaks down, it begins to almost devour itself. And I think that with the stress levels that the populace has had lately, losing their homes, losing their cars, losing their jobs, there's a lot of cancer floating out there, because we're vibrating at a lower frequency when we become extremely depressed. And that's what's happening. On the other hand, people come down with the flu all the time, and quite a few people die from the flu. The flu is nothing to take lightly. It's a very serious disease. It's a debilitating disease that allows other diseases like a pneumonia to move in and kill you. So, you find the flu, you fix the flu, you do what it is you need to do to get over the flu. And it's the same thing with cancer. We've been so frightened by so many horror stories, and very few stories out there that give us light, that give us hope, that we have allowed ourselves to become paralyzed by the negative side of cancer. And that's why I think it's so important for me to get my story out there, because I survived recurrence, stage 4 recurrence. I survived it. And people say, well, why did you get it again if you were vibrating at such a high frequency? And that is something that we can get into later, and that is my divine game plan that I believe we all come down here with. And my divine game plan was to help doctors see.
GIC Radio presents The Truth Denied, Talk Radio, with your host, Roxy Lopez, where truth never lies. If you would like to speak with Roxy on the air, the call-in number is 347-327-9997. Here she is, your host, Roxy Lopez.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Truth Tonight Talk Radio, and I'll be your host today, Roxy Lopez. Today is the 16th of March. This year is flying by. Welcome. As usual, we have a spectacular guest today. I am very grateful to have Kathleen OKeefe Kanavos on the show today. In light of a lot of you know what happened in my world last year, my sister, dear sister, passed away of cancer. I spent her last days with her, I should say, and I was glad to have that opportunity to have those last conversations and very deep conversations. As you all know, my sister had an extreme will. Kathleen's story. I will mention something that Kathleen has said. She said there is almost always a point in the process of illness where logic, reason, and medical expertise fails. It's at this point a patient slips through the cracks, sometimes never to recover. I want to welcome to the show Kathleen OKeefe Kanavos. Welcome, Kathleen. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me, Roxy. It's wonderful to be here with you and your audience today.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time. You're a busy woman. My goodness.
I always have time for you.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Now, I'm going to just start out by asking something, and if you want to backtrack from here, that's fine. I want to know, first and foremost, why the word cancer scares us when we hear that word, and why so many of us still consider the diagnosis of cancer as a death sentence.
Well, I think cancer was always a death sentence up until just within the past, I'd say 10 years. But now we have more people than ever before, not only surviving cancer, but surviving recurrence. You know, it's sort of find it, fix it. I believe that we all have cancer cells in our body.